This time on Road and Race, I upgrade the entire suspension by fitting stiffer polyurethane bushings.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Road and Race. In this episode I'm working on my 350Z. In part 1 I stripped down the entire underside of the car to get an idea of how bad the rust was, and I also went through and inspected each part. In part 2 I went about treating the rust on the chassis and suspension parts using the 4-stage rust buster method. And in part 3 I dealt with the remaining rusty nuts, bolts and brackets by zinc plating them. So what's left to do? Well, I've still some parts to treat for rust and then paint. Before I show you that, let's talk about upgrading the suspension by fitting stiffer polyurethane bushings. Here's a layout of the driver's side front suspension. There are a number of arms and each has a rubber bushing in them, which connects them to the rest of the car. Rubber bushings are fitted to most cars at a factory because they're cheap, but also because they're fairly flexible. They are able to absorb some of the vibrations in the car, leading to a more comfortable ride. The downside of this flexibility though is increased body roll, which is especially noticeable when driving at the track. And because my car is mostly driven at the track, I want to kind of reduce this amount of body roll and improve handling as much as I can. That's why I'll be fitting stiffer polyurethane bushings. I've got bushings for the entire suspension from Whiteline. So I'm going to fit them to all the suspension arms, the rear subframe and differential. So let's get started by tackling this rear control arm.
First, we need to get the old bushing out. To do this, I got this bushing pressing kit from Sealey. It's got 27 different size cups, ranging from 43mm up to 85mm. So I've got all the sizes I need for all the different size bushings on the car. So this is how it works. Find a cup bigger than the existing bushing and fit it on the bar. Then find a cup that fits the bushing exactly and fit that. Finally, fit the ends. Pop it in a vise, then turn the end to wind in the cup to push the bushing out. The cups in the Sealey kit have a handy slot so you can see your progress. Now, this arm's quite rusty, so let's quickly restore it. First we degrease, desalt, then remove the rust. Finally, some rust converter to treat any remaining rust. And then 2 coats of the special epoxy mastic paint. I go into much more detail in part 2 of this series, where I show the full restoration process and what products I used. Now we can fit the new bushing. So as before, assemble the press with a cup that's the same size as the bushing and a larger one. Then press in the new bushing. After that, coat the inner sleeve with the supplied grease. Then insert it. And here we are, all done.
So that's the process in full. Now, there's a lot of bushings to fit onto the car, so I'm not going to show you all of them, but I'll show you the more popular ones. These include the front banana arm, the rear differential, and the rear subframe.
Whilst the first bushing was simple to press out, for some reason this can fit a completely different bushing in the other hole. Annoyingly, it's got a lip that is flush with the mount, so we can't use the pressing kit here. So the centre core needs drilling out, and then the bushing needs a couple of slits cut in it with a reciprocating saw. After that, it can be easily tapped out. The diff bushings come in two pieces, so simply slot them in. The larger one goes in the top. Now onto the 4 rear subframe bushings. The process for this is the same as the diff. Drill out the centre core, then cut into the sleeve to get it out. Then follow the instructions to fit the Whiteline bushings into the subframe. Lastly, there's the bushing that holds the diff to the subframe. This time I drilled all around the bushing core, then used the pressing kit to get the core out. Then, once again, cut the sleeve. The new bushing is easy to fit by tapping it with a rubber mallet.
So that's all the bushings done for the entire car. As I said earlier, I've not filmed all of them, but I've shown you all the techniques if you fancy tackling this yourself. If you're thinking about replacing any bushings on your car, I wouldn't even consider it without a kit like this from Sealey. It makes it as easy as it can be. It's also a good piece of kit, it feels solid, and it's really well made. I have a link in the description box if you want to check it out. I appreciate though, this is a lot of work, and some of you may not have the money nor the inclination to fit all the bushings to the car like I did. So just thought I'd quickly mention that Whiteline do an essentials kit which just includes the front suspension and the differential, and these are probably the easier ones to fit and make the most difference to the handling. There's a link in the description box if you want to check it out, and there's also a code if you want to get a little bit of money off. One slightly interesting thing I thought I'd mention is that the differential bushing is fluid filled from the factory. As you saw when I drilled into it, it was bone dry. So even though it looked fine, it must have failed a while ago. Also, you may have noticed I didn't restore the rusty differential. The reason for this is that I'm likely to upgrade it in the near future. This car comes with a viscous limited slip diff, which is fine, but not the best. There's a mechanical limited slip diff, which should give much better performance on track, so I'm keen to try one of those out. You have to take the entire differential apart, so whilst I'm at it, I might as well restore it then. Also, it's got lots of fins and nooks and crannies, which makes cleaning off the rust difficult with the tools I have. So for the best results, I need to get it sandblasted. Anyway, the diff is easy to swap in and out, and as it's a big lump of cast iron, the rust won't be getting too bad for a while at least. Lastly, here's a montage of all the rusty bits I've restored and painted. I'll quickly mention what's coming up in the next video. Well, I'm mostly ready to put the car back together again now. I just need to work out what I'm doing with this rusty exhaust. I've still got the original exhaust that came with the car, and after 16 years, there's a few issues. Whilst the pipework and resonator are looking a bit rusty, they could be cleaned up. The main problem are the catalytic converters. Whilst they still work fine, they are very, very rusty, and the brackets that helps hold them in place have rusted off and would need welding back on. So, I need your input. What should I do? Option 1, I guess, is just restore what I have and get the brackets welded back on. That's probably the cheapest option. I'd say probably the mid-range cost with option 2 is to just replace the catalytic converters. I could go for something with a bit more performance, like high flow cats, get a few more horsepower out of the engine. That could be quite a good idea. Or should I bite the bullet and just replace the entire thing? The thing is, I've only got about £400 to spend, so I need to be quite prudent here. Let me know what you think I should do. Also, I've got a cheeky little suspension upgrade to fit, but more of that in the next episode. If you want to try and guess what it is, please leave a comment. If you're interested in the Sealey kit or the Whiteline Bushings, I've links in the description box. And as always, thanks for watching.